There was silence in the Galactic Council chamber when the humans stood up. Not the kind of silence born of respect, no. This was the sound of empires holding their breath. General Elias Grant didn't raise his voice. He didn't have to. He simply placed a shattered child's helmet on the speaking pedestal, still stained with lunar dust and blood. Then he looked every alien leader in the eye and said, "You attacked our home." And for the first time in 5,000 years, the council trembled. There was no applause when the human walked in, no ceremonial music, no diplomatic greeting, just the sound of boots on polished obsidian echoing through a chamber that hadn't seen war in centuries. The Hall of Species Unity, tall, cold, carved into orbit above Vieson Prime, had never hosted a man like General Elias Grant. He wasn't dressed like a diplomat. Black combat uniform, high-collared, medals stripped away. His expression was unreadable, eyes scanning 100 alien delegates like he was mapping battlefield positions. He didn't flinch under the weight of a 1,000-year-old ceiling or the stares of empires who thought themselves above consequences. Councillor Threx, Val rose from the central dais, regal in his blue ceremonial coils, voice oozing civility. Human representative, the council welcomes your presence in this forum of peace. Grant didn't return the bow. He walked straight to the speaker's pedestal, his voice sharp and quiet. Earth was attacked. The room didn't react. Not yet. We recovered wreckage. From the orbital strike on Luna Station. Advanced weapons, plasma-based, not human design. He pressed a button on a wrist pad. A hollow display blinked into life above him, spinning fragments of alloy marked with faint symbols. Graxan military glyphs. Now there was a stir. Vaal raised a hand. "General, these symbols can be faked. The Council's investigation is still pending," Grant interrupted without raising his voice. There was no investigation. There was stalling. Obfuscation. And while you drafted your statements, families buried their dead. A few delegates shifted uncomfortably. Others whispered in languages thick with syllables. The silence from Vaal lingered longer than it should have. "We have no reason to believe the Council authorized any act of aggression against Earth," Vaal replied. "It is likely an unaffiliated pirate faction using stolen technology." Grant tilted his head. "Pirates?" He tapped another control. The display shifted. Satellite footage from a damaged lunar observatory. Orbital bombardment in progress. White hot. Streaks hammering craters, domes collapsing. A child screaming through a cracked helmet before static swallowed her. Gasps. A few species winced, aliens unused to seeing humans cry in real time. There's nothing unaffiliated about warships. Cloaked with Graxan phase arrays, Grant continued. Nor do pirates usually operate with Council-level authorization beacons. He looked around. Unless something's changed in galactic piracy. Val's tone hardened. "General Grant, the Council urges patience. Your species is young to interstellar politics. It is easy to misinterpret. You're not going to talk me down with protocol," Grant snapped. His voice cut clean through the chamber. "We've played the game, sat through committees, signed your treaties. We didn't mistake shadows for an enemy. We recovered enough tech to rebuild the entire targeting matrix. And it all points here." He took a breath, slower, colder. "I'm not here to make accusations. I'm here because no one answered when we asked nicely." A Yatari delegate leaned forward. "If this is true, then it is a matter of grave consequence. But this council requires confirmation. Third-party validation." "It's not a court," Grant said. "You're not a neutral body. You're a wall dressed up like a gate." The chamber rippled again. Some bristled. Others listened. A few looked genuinely unsettled. Grant wasn't done. "You want verification? 32,000 civilians died in the first volley. We retrieved this," he said, pulling something from his coat. A child's helmet. Cracked. Lunar dust still clinging to the visor. Blood dried along the edge. He placed it gently on the podium. This belonged to my niece. She was 6. No, one spoke. I don't care who gave the order, Grant said. What matters is that it came from within your territory, used your ships, your codes, and your silence to justify the kill. Counselor Va'al's voice was low, now tinged with unease. You bring grief into a diplomatic session. Grant met his gaze. No, you brought it. I'm just returning it. Another delegate tried to diffuse the tension. We need time to process these allegations. Emotions do not dictate law. Grant ignored him. If Earth had responded with full force, this chamber would be ash. We chose restraint. And now I'm here asking a question. He looked across the faces again. Scales, fur, shells, skin, blinking, calculating, avoiding. Who attacked my world? A silence fell that was different this time. Heavy. A few tried to look brave. Most didn't. Va'al stood, taller now, trying to retake control. General, I suggest you return to your people and allow the council to... I'm not leaving until I get an answer. That was when the guards moved. But only slightly. A twitch, a hesitation. None of them stepped forward. Not one. Grant smiled, just barely. You invited me here, thinking I'd beg, thinking Earth would fall in line, that we'd play our part as the grateful new species. We buried our dead, and now we bury illusions. He reached up and shut the display off. The lights returned. The council chamber suddenly felt much smaller. You think this is about vengeance? It's not. It's about clarity. Va'al narrowed his eyes. And what do you want from us? Grant didn't hesitate. The truth. And what happens after depends on how fast you give it. Then he turned. Sat back down. Silent. The child's helmet remained on the podium, and no one dared touch it. The room didn't breathe. For 10 whole seconds, the chamber of the Galactic Council sat in frozen silence, every species trying to measure what had just happened. The human hadn't threatened them, not directly, but the helmet on the podium said more than any declaration of war ever could. Then the whispers began. Confirmed? Impossible. Fabricated data. Must be... General Grant stood again. This time, he didn't ask for permission. He pressed another command on his wrist pad, and the air above him shimmered with a new projection. This one not of debris, but code. Encryption trails, pulse signatures, power readings. All neatly organized, telemetry logs pulled from the debris. Power signatures traceable to Graxan military platforms, Generation 17, he said. Phase array cloaking and gravimetric distortion fields, the same found in your patrol fleets. Va'al stiffened. You accuse my people? I'm stating what the data shows, Grant interrupted. These weren't pirates. They weren't civilians. They were trained, coordinated, backed by someone with council-grade military supply chains. A delegate from the Vrali Confederacy leaned forward, frowning. Show the jump path. Grant swiped a finger. A star map appeared, showing a warp, trail traced backward from Luna. It didn't end in a lawless sector. It terminated inside a protected zone under the Council's own jurisdiction. Deep inside. Not even smugglers went there. Another delegate, a younger one from the Zathari, stood. This is not what we were told. We received a classified briefing that said it was a Terran weapons test gone wrong. Heads turned. Va'al's expression twitched. Grant didn't wait. There it is. Misinformation seeded across member states. You didn't investigate. You were fed a narrative. The Vrali counselor looked pale. If this came from within, if it was a sanctioned strike, Va'al slammed a hand down. There is no proof of authorization. I don't need authorization to know intent, Grant said coolly. You don't deploy cloak-capable fleets without logistics support, without launch corridors, without silence from the top. A ripple of discomfort moved through the chamber. Val regained his voice, but the edges were fraying. Even if your data is accurate, which remains to be validated, what do you seek? Retribution? War? No, Grant said. Accountability, public, recorded. And now, a long pause. Then one voice cracked, young, nervous. I was told it would be a field test. That Earth would never know. Everyone turned. It was the Zathari again, pale blue skin almost translucent under the lights. He swallowed hard. My delegation received a packet from the Dominion. It said the ships were drones, that they were simulating a containment scenario. They said the humans were aware of it. Grant locked eyes with him. Did that simulation include flattening colonies and bombing a research facility with children? Inside? The Zathari looked down. Chaos broke. Delegates shouting over each other. Some demanded independent inquiries. Others accused Grant of falsifying records. Several called for adjournment, and Threx Vaal finally snapped. You dare stand in this chamber and lecture us on truth. Your kind has been spacefaring for barely a century. You evolved in one gravity well, and now you believe yourselves arbiters of morality. Grant's voice didn't rise. We didn't ask to be arbiters. You made us witnesses. Vaal's glare burned. You're trying to divide this council. No, Grant replied. Truth did that. He brought up another image. A long corridor of names. Civilians, scientists, engineers, teachers, children, all verified casualties from the lunar attack. Every name linked to identity files, pictures. Some species looked away, others stared. One delegate muttered something about propaganda until a face came up, one that had been on an interspecies diplomatic mission. Killed in the strike. Grant spoke again. You built an empire on protocol. You taught yourselves that wars were won by treaties and silence. But we haven't forgotten how to bleed. And we sure as hell haven't forgotten how to count the dead. He let the words settle, then took one step back and waited. The council sat fractured, old alliances visibly fraying. The delegation from the Olkari, normally staunch council loyalists, began whispering furiously among themselves. The journal ambassador, known for neutrality, tapped something on his pad. An encrypted message going out. Someone was panicking. Vaal stood. Enough! The session is suspended. This matter requires closed inquiry and review by— I decline, Grant said. You don't have authority to decline. I didn't ask. 2 guards moved, council security. They didn't draw weapons, but they stepped forward. Grant didn't even look at them. Move against me, and you'll answer to a dozen cloaked Terran fleets sitting over your capital. Cities. Quiet. Watching. Gasps. Vaal froze. You wouldn't dare. We didn't come to destroy anything, Grant said, calm as ice. We came so you'd listen. One of the guards turned slightly, facing the council, not Grant. The other followed. They weren't stupid. A different voice cut in from the upper seating. Olkari delegate, female, sharp eyes. We were told Earth had weapons, yes, but that they wouldn't use them unless provoked. That Earth was manageable, contained. She stared down at the helmet on the podium. Clearly, we were lied to. The chamber descended into silence again. This one lasted longer. Grant didn't push. He simply let the image of the destroyed colony, the list of dead, and the crack in their armor speak for itself, and when Vaal finally sat down, no one applauded. No one stood. They just stared. Because for the first time, the council realized Earth wasn't asking, it was warning. The council chamber had changed, not physically, no stones had shifted, no seats had moved, but the air had thickened. Power no longer sat solely on the dais. It now stood quietly in the shadow of the human general who hadn't raised his voice once. General Grant tapped his pad again. A final projection appeared. This one was darker, older, not from Luna, but from deep within the Terran intelligence network. A decrypted audio file, distorted, half-corrupted, but the voice on it, cold, deliberate, was unmistakable. Deploy. Test Fleet 17. Confirmed target. Terran lunar node. Civilian loss acceptable. Ensure plausible deniability. Counselor Threx Va'al's voice. A ripple passed through the chamber like an electric pulse. Several delegates turned toward Va'al. Others immediately looked away, as if guilt could be caught through eye contact. The Olkari representative stood again. "Is that your voice, Counselor?" Va'al's jaw tightened. "It's a fabrication. A crude manipulation. Terran propaganda designed to—" "We verified it," Grant interrupted. "The packet was intercepted mid-transmission. Bounced off one of our old Saturn relays by accident. Dumb luck. Our analysts had it cracked in 4 hours." The silence turned predatory. Political allies began leaning back from Va'al's position as if his skin were contagious. "You don't have jurisdiction," Va'al hissed. Grant didn't flinch. "We're not here for jurisdiction. We're here because no one stopped. You!" A voice called out from above, one of the newer delegates from the rimward clade. "If this is true, it's not just an attack on Earth. It's a violation of the Interstellar Sovereignty Accord." Another followed. "It's a war crime," Va'al barked. "Enough! You're letting a single species hijack—" "Hijack?" Grant's voice sliced through the air. "You're accusing me of hijacking a council session after your ships fired on a non-military civilian colony during peacetime?" No one interrupted this time. "Let me clarify something," Grant said. "This isn't just about Luna. It's about how your systems are built. Closed loops, denial chains. Everyone here was told a different lie so no one would compare notes. The Dominion told some of you it was a drill. Others that Earth volunteered. We didn't." The Zathari delegate, now visibly rattled, nodded. "Our briefing claimed Earth authorized a live fire containment simulation." "You call that a simulation?" Grant asked, pulling up one final image. Time-stamped footage of a medical wing collapsing under kinetic bombardment, personnel screaming under falling rubble. He let it run for only 3 seconds. The chamber went still. "It wasn't just a lie," Grant said. "It was an orchestrated campaign, layered misinformation, and none of you asked questions, because it was easier to believe Earth was expendable." The Vrali counselor cleared his throat, voice low. "Then what now, General? You've made your case. What do you want?" Grant stared at the helmet still resting on the podium. Then he looked up. "I want acknowledgement. Open. On record. That Earth was attacked without provocation. That someone within this council authorized it. And I want every delegate here to understand that this wasn't a message to humanity." He paused. "It was a test to see if we'd bend." No one spoke. A few scribes stopped recording. Others typed faster. "And if the council refuses?" asked the journal ambassador. His tone wasn't threatening, just tired. Grant met his eyes. "Then Earth will respond accordingly. And I assure you, we're no longer interested in silence." Va'al stood again. "You're bluffing. You don't have the capability." Grant raised an eyebrow. "Are you willing to bet your capital on that?" He tapped the pad again. The chamber lights dimmed, replaced by an orbital display. It showed 3 separate capital worlds, Graxon Prime, Vatori Nexus, and the core station orbiting Vieson itself. Floating above each, invisible until that moment, were Terran vessels, stealth-class dreadnoughts, decloaking in perfect sync. Their weapon arrays pulsed faintly, powered but not armed. The shock was total. The Vrali delegate whispered, "They were already here." Va'al's voice faltered. "You violated every treaty?" "No," Grant said. "We followed your treaties. You just never expected us to understand them better than you." The projection faded. The lights returned. But the chamber felt exposed now, naked. "You sent weapons. We sent shadows," Grant said. "You threatened our people. We responded with presence. not violence. Yet. He stepped forward slightly. We waited. We hoped this was a mistake, that someone would own it. But no one came. So we did. The Olkari delegate stood again. And if the council issues an official apology, reparations, full investigation, Grant's face didn't change. Then we begin a new chapter, together. But that begins with truth, not spin, and certainly not Vaal. Councillor Threx Vaal's mouth moved, but no sound came out. A new delegate, quiet until now, stood. One of the oldest members representing a neutral system untouched by war in 1,000 years. His voice was soft, but it cut through everything. Terran is right. We've built our peace on shadows, and now those shadows answer. No one argued. Grant gave a single nod. You have 3 cycles to respond formally. Earth will not strike first, but we will not wait forever. He stepped back from the podium. No applause followed, no formal closing. The council was unraveling, in silence. Delegates whispering behind closed encryptions, old allies avoiding eye contact, factions forming without a word spoken. As Grant exited, one of the guards, alien, tall, armored, offered a respectful nod, and for the first time in recorded council history, a human walked out without permission, and no one tried to stop him. The emergency convocation convened barely an hour after General Grant's departure, summoned by an Olkari motion that carried more weight than any ordinary decree. A hush fell as Councillor Vaal took the central dais again, this time with sweat at his temples and eyes darting across anxious faces. Behind him, the chamber's projection grid pulsed, waiting. Grant stepped forward without invitation, boots clicking in measured rhythm. Black uniform crisp, posture unyielding. He didn't pause. His voice cut through the murmurs like a blade. Esteemed delegates, he began. Earth gave you 48 hours to acknowledge responsibility. You chose silence. He raised a gloved hand. The grid flickered to life, displaying a countdown timer set at 7 cycles. That ends now. A tremor passed through the assembly as Vaal's smug facade cracked. What is the meaning of this? He demanded. Grant didn't hesitate. He recited terms with surgical precision. Within 7 full cycles, the Council must 1. Publicly identify and hand over all individuals who authorized the unprovoked assault on Luna Station. 2. Provide restitution for civilian losses and infrastructure damage. 3. Institute transparent oversight to prevent recurrence. He let each point linger before moving on. Failure to comply will be interpreted as a refusal to engage in peaceful resolution. The chamber erupted. A chorus of objections, urgent requests for clarification, frantic data pings from delegate pads. Zathari counselors jabbered about diplomatic norms. Vrali envoys cited arcane legal articles. The journal ambassador, voice weary yet firm, called for procedure. Grant simply nodded. I anticipated this. He tapped his wrist pad. Instantly, 3 holographic spheres appeared behind him, each resolving into a planet. Graxon Prime, Vatori Nexus, Viesin Core Station. Orbit lines traced the stealth-class dreadnoughts now stationed above them, unarmed, unhostile. Visible only because he chose to show them, gasps and curses swept the room. The Vrali ambassador's jaw dropped. An Olkari aide bolted upright, scanning the readouts. Several counselors attempted to call security, but their guards hesitated. Fear and uncertainty stilled their training. You must understand, Grant said softly, eyes scanning the assembly. We did not reveal these ships to threaten annihilation. We revealed them so you'd realize Earth has grown vigilant and capable of enforcing its own survival. Vaal stumbled for response. Those vessels violate the non-interference clause. They comply with every treaty, Grant interrupted. Our vessels remain cloaked until provocation. We abide by the statutes you drafted. We mastered them better than you ever expected. An alien voice rose in the gallery. An elder of the rimward clade, draped in ivory robes. So this is your leverage? Fear? She asked, voice ice cold. We demanded truth, not intimidation. Grant inclined his head. Truth is seldom gentle. You demanded clarity. You have it. The Olkari representative, usually measured and diplomatic, stood. What guarantee do we have that Earth will stand down after 7 cycles? That you won't use these ships to enact vengeance? He met her gaze squarely. Earth's interest is stability. We will not fire first. But we will defend our home. Our patience has limits. He activated one final image, a time-lapse of Luna's surface, transforming from shattered ruins into makeshift memorials, names etched in crystal, growing bouquets of synthetic blossoms. The montage ended on a child's helmet, polished and carefully placed beneath a new monument. I spent my life fighting wars, Grant said, voice rough with memory. I know the cost. I prefer peace, but I refuse to watch my world burn under your convenience. Vaal's composure shattered. This is blackmail. No. It's a choice, Grant replied. You can choose transparency and atonement, or you can choose isolation and force our hand. Suddenly, alarms chimed across delegate terminals, urgent missives from capital worlds, ships preparing contingency protocols, emergency mobilizations, panic rippling through council factions. Some delegates frantically tapped messages. Others rose to shout over the din. In the chaos, a junior counselor from the Mercantori stood and spoke steadily. If we comply, do we risk empowering Earth to dictate policy in perpetuity? Her voice quivered with genuine concern. Grant's reply was immediate. Earth seeks equality, not supremacy. We did not come here to rewrite governance. We came here to demand honesty. A heavy silence followed, different from earlier disquiet. This one was thoughtful, pensive. Faces that had been red with anger now looked tired, contemplative. The chamber's undercurrent shifted from confrontation to calculus. Every delegate measured the cost of defiance versus cooperation. Vaal attempted a final retort, but his voice faltered. He glanced at his security detail, at the dreadnought projections, at the unified attention of the assembly. The script had flipped. He had no lines left. Grant stepped back and allowed the hollow grid to collapse. The timer blinked on, 7 cycles counting down in stark red numerals. He gave a single salute, military, precise, and turned toward the exit. His departure left the chamber in stunned silence, no formal adjournment, no relief. Only the weight of a covenant redefined in 7 pulses of a galactic clock. As the doors slid shut, whispers began again. But now they spoke of accountability, reparations, and cautious hope. Somewhere in the bowels of the council, alliances realigned. Policy architects drafted candid communiques. Earth's ultimatum had not only exposed duplicity, it had forced the council to confront its own conscience. Outside the Hall of Species Unity, stars glittered indifferently. But inside, a new reality had taken root. Humanity's voice would echo for 7 cycles, and then, in whatever form the council chose, the true age of interstellar diplomacy would begin. Months after the fateful confrontation, pale sunlight filtered through the domed canopy of Luna Station's central plaza, where shattered columns had given way to gleaming monuments. Engineers in reinforced exosuits guided construction bots as families placed wreaths beneath names, etched in obsidian. Researchers, technicians, children whose laughter once echoed in sterile corridors. The cratered scars had vanished, replaced by smooth walkways and reflective fountains that caught starlight and hope in equal measure. Back on Terra, every hollow network carried the unedited address General Elias Grant delivered in orbit. No edits, no spin. His measured tone, the unflinching presentation of proof, and the quiet fury in his eyes rippled across systems unaccustomed to such raw honesty. Worlds that once whispered council talking points now broadcast debates, questioning whether they had been complicit in a campaign of deception. On Kesari Prime, protests flared outside diplomatic embassies, banners declaring "No more shadows," chants demanding member states sever ties with the old guard. In the Zephorian belt, oil-rich, syndicates paused exports, pressuring their representatives to back an independent inquiry. Across the rimward clade, religious orders fasted in solidarity, viewing humanity's stand as a moral reckoning. Inside the refurbished assembly hall on Vieson Core, a packed gathering convened under urgent summons. Holographic reports charted defections, dozens of systems petitioning to withdraw from the Compact's enforcement wing until accountability measures were enacted. Veteran delegates, once pillars of protocol, now argued openly for transparency instead of bureaucratic cover-ups. The air crackled with uncertainty. Alliances shifted like sand. Councillor Threx Vaal, conspicuously absent, became the subject of rumors. Some whispered he'd gone into hiding. Others claimed he'd fled to the farthest rim aboard a clandestine freighter. A handful insisted he'd been detained by his own security detail out of fear of retaliation. Whatever the truth, his empty seat loomed over proceedings like a silent indictment. Meanwhile, on Terra's capital, Grant addressed a gathering of interstellar press in the vaulted lobby of the United Earth Embassy. Photographers' flashes danced off polished floors as he recounted his vow. We extended patience. We sought dialogue. Now we rebuild trust on a foundation of truth. His cadence was firm, but not unkind, reminding listeners that strength, without mercy, was not humanity's creed. A reporter pressed him. "General, some accuse Earth of overreach, deploying fleets in sovereign airspace. How do you respond?" Grant paused, gaze steady. "We revealed our presence so the galaxy would see our commitment to defense, not aggression. Our ships remain cloaked unless threats materialize. We won't fire the first shot, but we will ensure no one strikes unchallenged." Outside, envoys from newly allied worlds arrived at embassies draped in Terran flags. Delegations that once offered formal nods now embraced envoys with open arms, sharing data on joint defense networks and humanitarian rebuild efforts. Trade sanctions lifted, cultural exchanges resumed, and a fresh sense of optimism threaded through markets and academies alike. High Command technicians oversaw the return of stealth battle groups to standby modes, gravity anchors stabilizing, energy cores entering standby. Their ghost-like silhouettes returned to the void, vigilant watchers rather than conquerors. In briefing rooms, officers studied new protocols emphasizing de-escalation, information sharing, and collective security pacts. Late one evening, Grant convened his senior aides in the quiet of his private quarters overlooking a moonlit bay. Advisor Chen, her brow furrowed, reported encrypted chatter of fringe factions plotting to exploit the unrest. "If they see weakness, they'll strike," she warned. Grant leaned back, fingers steepled. "Let them try. We've traded complacency for clarity. We won't be caught unprepared again." His words carried an echo of promise. Humanity would remain vigilant, but just. There would be no hysterical calls for vengeance, only firm guarantees that home would never again lie undefended. As the night deepened, monitors displayed live feeds from Luna's memorial gardens, Terra's rebuilt skyports, and distant protest rallies calling for lasting reform among the stars. Dawn approached, and Grant stepped onto a balcony overlooking the Embassy Plaza. He inhaled the crisp air tinged with ozone and hope. Below, children chased red and blue hollow kites, laughter mingling with the hum of daily life. He allowed himself a small, satisfied smile. In a galaxy long ruled by discreet maneuvers, he murmured, we chose the bold path. We spoke openly. We stood our ground. And now, the cosmos knows that when humanity roars, every star trembles. Because history remembered not only what was said, but how it was spoken. And in that resonant voice, a legend was born.